Oh, Logan and Apps here from the Dimp Digital team, bringing you a review on Super Mario Odyssey. Apps, how you doing?
Good, thanks, you.
Yeah, not too bad. Really scraping the bottom of the barrel nowadays. Logan brought in to review Nintendo games. So that's really the state that we're at.
Well, because there's a new system that we're going to trial for this particular review, I thought at least you can follow base instructions. The rest can't be trusted.
Caveated.
Until they see it in action, then they might be able to do interviewer. But as it stands, you can follow basic English text off a page.
People may not even notice a difference because we were so slick beforehand. You may not even notice this new and improved structure. You know, when they come out with like new toothpaste and they go new and improved, you go, there's nothing wrong, nothing changed there. Well, it's going to be much the same, I suspect. But anyway, we digress. Okay, so do you want to get your cards on the table for us and give us a quick rundown?
Yeah, so for those that don't know, Super Mario Odyssey, I guess, is a 3D Mario game. So typically that classifies as a 3D platformer, available exclusively on the Nintendo Switch and was released in October the 27th, 2017. Now, if you look at the reviews, it has been one of the highest rated games of the year so far, pegging the likes of Zelda and even in some aggregate sites going above it, so it's certainly been getting universal acclaim, it appears. And my history with 3D Mario games is pretty poor, actually. I've dabbled in them over the years and over the decades, but I've actually only completed Super Mario Galaxy before, so I'm not some hardcore 3D Mario fanboy. But seeing the pre-footage and also seeing that the reviews were very high, I was very pumped to play Super Mario Odyssey.
Yep, so I think I'll just chuck my cards on the table as an interviewer and just say I am pretty much the same as you. I've dabbled a little bit with Mario, but I haven't played any of the 3D ones to date. I've only played the side-scrolling ones, really. So this is a sort of a new venture for me, and I haven't completed it yet, but I'm getting there with it. But okay, shall we move on to the story then? What did you make of that? What, rich backstory or not?
Well, it's Mario, so you're not going to get.
You know what you're getting, don't you?
Yeah, you're not getting Uncharted levels of story or Last of Us levels, Naughty Dog. It's classic Mario setup. Bowser has stolen Princess Peach, and you've got to save her. Very slight twist in that he's also stolen the sister of Cappy, who is essentially your companion that allows you to take control of enemies and objects. And in this instance, Bowser is planning to marry Peach, and he's collecting all the sort of pre-wedding bits and pieces as he moves from one kingdom to another. Like in one of them, he's trying to get a wedding cake, and he's flanked by some wedding planners called the Broodals, who occasionally serve as bosses in segments of the game. It's silly, but it isn't presented in any other way, to be honest, and it services the adventure of Mario just fine. And the fact that it doesn't get in the way means it's totally acceptable.
Yeah, I found that it's sort of a bit tongue-in-cheek, I felt, but they can get away with it. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. So what's it offering then? What game modes have we got here? Have we got sort of 15 game modes, or what are we looking at?
No, quite simply, you've got a campaign, and that's it. Now, you can play the campaign local co-op through the Joy-Cons and splitting those out, allowing one of you to take control of Mario and the other one Cappy. I've only briefly experimented with it. The person controlling Cappy seems like a little bit of a passive situation, but I guess for those that are desperate for some sort of co-op, it's there to give a bash. I don't know if you managed to give it a go, knowing that you have dabbled with that sort of 3D Mario kind of co-op before.
I had bigged this up as a co-op game. To the other half, and I sort of said, don't worry, Mario's out. I went, all right, I've bought Mario. She went, right, good. And then, as I say, when we got on it, I kind of felt like, I would say it's not true co-op. I don't, there's no advantage. Yeah, it's just it's there if you just want to play 10 minutes and sort of feel like you've done something, but you won't. Whoever's got Mario has got the title, basically. The second person can't do anything independently, really.
No.
So I kind of think, why have they bothered? But I think that's probably one of the biggest things in it for me is that all or at least the ones I've played, it was quite heavily co-op, or at least you had Luigi on there that you could play with, and that seems to just not be present in this at all.
Yeah, it reminds me of the Galaxy style where the other person was who could fire and collect stars for you. So I think there are two different kind of 3D Marios out there. One that's focused heavily on co-op where you have two characters on the screen, and this one where it's a single player game. However, you can split the controls essentially and play it with another person.
I mean, it was an opinion bought out of ignorance. I'm sure if I'd have read into it before, I could have. The thing is, I was going to get it either way. It wasn't a swing for me, but
I think most people looking at this game will be going, right, that hasn't got co-op, I'm not playing it. I think generally people know what they're getting into. It is primarily for one person, but the option is there if required.
Yeah. So obviously we know there's no online option for it. It is what it is. It's completely local.
Yeah, no online. No online co-op at all. But there's the only kind of connectivity they have, I guess, in the game is leaderboards. So some of the mini games that you play, you can see how you rank amongst the friends and whatnot, and in the world. That's really the only connectivity you have. So it's definitely, in terms of its modes and its online options, a single player through and through.
Yeah, agreed. So how do you feel it is presented? So do you feel the graphics, is it what you're expecting? Was it a bit too cartoony? Were you expecting a bit more realism from the trailers? How did you feel that stacked up against your expectations?
I think for the most part, Super Mario Odyssey is beautiful. It's not completely perfect. There's some kind of like popping of enemies and objects occasionally, but it doesn't take away from the experience. And I feel like we got a lot of gritty, realistic games out there. Nintendo, again, playing to their strengths with this wonderful kind of cartoonish art style, and it works an absolute treat. It's easy on the eyes and it's a solid performer, so great stuff in my opinion on that front.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. It matched up to my expectations? And again, if people are expecting things that are going to blow your mind away, then you're probably not going to get it.
No.
All the sound, I think this is a new addition. We're talking about sound and music and effects. Mm-hmm. How was that expected? You got all the sounds from Mario, the Princess Peach, the Mario.
Yeah, that's all there. I mean, there's no real voice acting there, so there's a couple of subtitle bits that have some form of gabble. I don't know what they're talking, but they're mumbling.
It's like
something.
sim language, isn't it?
Yeah, it feels like that. It's probably actually a real language. We've been really offensive to some people, but it does sound like sim language. But I guess where you look at a Mario game, you look at the sound effects and the soundtrack, so they both fit the bill. Soundtrack is really, really good. It's got some like joyful and jolly tracks that fit each kingdom to a T, and I think it complements the art style and the mechanics and the other bits and pieces we'll talk about later. It all just seems to go hand in hand, which is great.
Yeah, I weirdly found that I quite liked the music to some of the levels. I was sort of sitting there going, I don't. It sort of tends to pass you by, but I was sitting there going, oh, that's a nice little. I was sort of jumping around or whatever, and I was quite enjoying that. It was a bit weird, but so how do you feel the game plays? I think that's probably one of the key things with Mario is, how did you find it for a 3D game?
Yeah, I think you're right to say that's the main thing for Mario, because as we've just established, it hasn't got the plethora of modes that you get in games. It hasn't perhaps got the story that people would want, so it is hinging on how the game actually functions, and I think this is where Super Mario Odyssey really does shine. The control scheme to me feels simple, really easy to pick up, but also has some more advanced controls there for those that are willing to learn them. And if you experiment with the different tools that are there, you can access secret areas, you can string together some nice enemy defeating combos there. So I really think they've got the controls down. One drawback I will say, and this is not a dig at motion controls in general, I don't mind there being motion controls in the game, but they essentially account for some of the advanced moves you can do with Cappy. Like you may have seen in some of the footage where you can spin the hat round and round and wider, which is really handy when you get overwhelmed with enemies. So it's great for the most part, but if you're playing in handheld mode, it's definitely a lot harder to get these to work. If you're in TV mode, playing with split Joy-Cons or the Pro Controller, then you're totally golden. But if you're primarily playing this in handheld mode, you're going to have a little bit of problems trying to get some of these moves out, which I think is a shame because, one of the great things with the Switch is you can take it on the go. Just means you kind of have to adjust your play style. Last night I was doing a race. There's a mini game that you can do a race from checkpoint A to B, and one of the effective ways of doing it is rolling. And to keep rolling, you need to shake the Joy-Con. So I was sitting there trying to do it with the handheld, shaking it, and it wasn't working. So I actually had to detach the Joy-Cons, put it in tabletop mode, shake the Joy-Con, and I managed to do it in the end. So it's definitely more difficult in handheld, but still serviceable, I find.
Yeah, I found them a little bit challenging at times, or a little hit and miss, I think, but it's probably how I describe it. So I try and do that one where it swirls all around you, and I'll do one where it just sort of throws it straight in front of us. And I was like, for God's sake, why is this so hard? Why can't I just double tap a button 3 times? I know what's going to happen. I'm not a big fan of motion controls like that. I find them a bit hit and miss.
Yeah, it's definitely something to be aware of. If you're playing outside of handheld, they're easy enough to do. But for those that don't like motion controls, they are there. They're not essential unless you want some of the really challenging stuff. For the main bulk of the game, you can get through without using them. I guess one of the big additions to Odyssey is the introduction of Cappy, and Cappy essentially lives in Mario's hat, and you throw Cappy at enemies and you can possess them, and then you become that enemy, and it's fantastic. I think it really opens up the options that the player has, and the kicker is that all the enemies that you encounter and that you possess, they feel superb. They work exactly how you would expect them to control, and they're all nice and unique to take control of. And I think it's a great way to mix up the 3D Mario formula. So for those of you that have played plenty of these over the years, this gives you some new options and is a highlight of Odyssey. Because there's no traditional kind of Super Mario power-ups, but in all honesty, during my time with the game, I didn't miss them. I think the possession mechanic offers so much flexibility. It's easy to implement, and it gives you that kind of an extra layer of the game, and it stands tall on its own without any of the power-ups needed.
Yeah, I must admit, I quite like that, and you get to know what you can do with all the different characters and what they're. I quite like that. I must admit, it worked out well for me.
Yeah.
So tell us a bit more about the game itself. So how do you progress in it? Is it linear? Are you there to build up Mario, make his abilities better, or tell me a bit more about that.
Yeah, so I guess the way that Mario Odyssey works is that you're chasing Bowser around the globe, and each level that you come across is called a kingdom, and a kingdom is an open hub area that will have its very unique and own style. So obviously we're speaking about New Donk City, which people would have seen in the pre-release footage. That's almost like a realistic city. There's a woodland level, there's a desert level, a water kingdom, a beach, loads and loads of different themes that all have unique enemies that are kind of introduced as you go along, and some classic underworlds to explore. There's 2D Mario segments that are thrown into the kingdoms to really keep things fresh, and as an open hub area, you're free to explore at your leisure, which is quite liberating. You're not just going through a linear level each time. You're going through and you're picking up things, doing them in your way. When you arrive at each kingdom, there's often a problem for you to solve. So when you turn up at the desert level or the desert kingdom, everyone there's freezing cold and the residents are complaining, and your objective is to solve this. Usually to solve said objective, it is following a waypoint and beating a boss, and then you are rewarded with what's known as power moons. And these are what are used to power up the Odyssey, and the Odyssey is the ship that you use to travel and move from place to place, and you can gather a certain number of these moons per level. And you'll get these by completing, like I said, the kingdom objective, but also by completing or carrying out some other random tasks across the world. This could be you ground and pounding a specific point in the map, reaching a really tricky and high up place, going down a classic Mario pipe and completing a traditional level. The list goes on. There's tons and tons of ways that you can be rewarded in getting these power moons. And as well as the power moons, obviously you've got the standard gold coins which you can collect, and these serve as a currency. You can visit a shop, you can use these to buy costumes, health boosts, or the odd power moon here and there. And there's no lives in Odyssey either, so by the time each time you die, you just lose a portion of those gold coins, which I think is a little bit of a better system. I know some people are making a bit of a faff over the live system. Obviously, in the older Marios, you get said lives that you pick up by eating a green egg or a green mushroom or whatever. And I think this is a bit of a sensible tweak. The difficulty of the game is nicely balanced, and it doesn't end up being too easy, nor does it get to the stage of you want to chuck in the handheld across the room because it's too difficult. But the game itself does a really good job of kind of training you and improving you as a player. Finally, the other thing that's on the levels are the purple coins, which are kind of a unique currency to each kingdom, and there's a set number of these per kingdom. They're usually very well hidden and challenging to get all of them. They're not something that you can just find by randomly walking around. You have to hunt these out, and if you can collect enough of these, you can buy some really sweet costumes, statues, souvenirs, stickers to go inside the Odyssey, and obviously costumes to put on Mario. And they're kingdom-specific coins, so they don't carry over from world to world. So if you collect 10 in the desert, then go to New Donk City, that 10 stays in the desert, and when you arrive in New Donk City, you start from scratch again. The only thing is, when you boil that down, it's toot, really, isn't it? It's like the stickers and the souvenirs. It is just toot. But as the game went on, I discovered that it was toot that I wanted, like especially the costumes. I didn't know I wanted to have new costumes for Mario. I thought I was happy with him in his red overalls and his blue flannel top or whatever he was wearing. But as soon as the option presented itself to get some new costumes, I had to have them. And I think what works really well is the challenge of getting them and the process and enjoying the process of getting those coins. And that's what kind of pushed me to go above and beyond. I think it's the first time in a long, long time that I've kind of gone out of my way to get collectible stuff. So with the open world kingdoms, there's all sorts you can do. The variety of moon collecting, the standard gold coins, purple coins. You've got a really well-oiled loop there that's just enjoyable to go through and dip into and go over and over and progress and to see new things. So they've seamlessly kind of moulded this together, and I feel that they've really smashed the design and the progress of Odyssey out of the park.
Yeah. I mean, you've talked a lot there, and I would agree with all of it. I think they have got it nicely balanced. It's not hassle to do it. Some of them you can get on the way. It might just be a little bit out your way, but you might be exploring a map. There's a lot of variety there, and it doesn't, as you say, I think it is nicely balanced. It doesn't make it too hard. You're sort of not afraid of losing lives to go and get different bits and bobs. So I think it is nicely balanced. So considering all there is to do, despite there not being much in the way of co-op or necessarily in multiplayer, how does it stack up for you value-wise? I mean, did you pay full whack download jobby like me, or did you get it a little bit cheaper?
No, I think I paid 40 UK pounds in the end. It was on, like I say, on offer. It was on offer at Amazon, so it's £10 cheaper, and I got a digital copy. I've gone full digital for the Switch, so I paid that. And like you said, there's low amount of there's pretty much no online options. There's low amount of different modes. It kind of all hangs on how deep the campaign is, but I think it's great. As I've mentioned, it's got supreme quality, but it's also got a lot of stuff to do. You could easily end up playing this for well over 15 hours without even realising it. I think they kind of, once you finish the game, there's also an end game there for you. So once the main campaign's clocked, there's reasons for you to carry on searching for moons and discovering new secrets. And the fact that Odyssey plays so well just adds to the experience. I'm usually the typical see the credits and move on to the next game kind of guy, but Super Mario Odyssey had its grip on me. I've seen the credits and I've played at least 5 hours, continued to find and explore the worlds of what the kingdoms have to offer. Wow.
That does surprise me. I didn't know that. I didn't know you'd started going back to it much. I think we'll see where this is going. Cool.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, you can lose hours in it just going back and getting collectibles and stuff, and it makes it enjoyable. It doesn't feel like hassle to do that.
No, and this is where it's really like a masterstroke, because it kind of, if you just want to go through the game, like Adkins steamed through it in over 10 hours, I think. If you just want to go through and just casually play it and bang it out and be done with it, you're gonna have a great time. But if you want to have 20 plus hours of the game, it's there as well. And it doesn't kind of feel like you're missing out if you do bin it early, but if you carry on playing, there's lots there for you to do. So I think that they've got the balance spot on to encourage hardcore players and also casual players to enjoy this.
Yeah, Destiny, take note. Anyway, that's I just had to get that in there. So I think we know where it's going. We've heard the word masterstroke already. Wow. So, I mean, where does this sit with you then, Joseph Appleyard?
Well, it's been a stunning year for video games, and Super Mario Odyssey has delivered on the promise and then some. I don't think I've played a video game where all the elements come together as well as this. Everything is tuned in to the same frequency with almost perfection, and it really feels like one of those games where the developer's vision has been executed flawlessly, and the result of that is you have one of the best video games in many, many years.
Do you see this as Game of the Year territory?
Oh yeah, it's definitely in that conversation, absolutely.
Interesting. So, firstly, do we buy it or do we bin it?
Fucking buy it.
There you go. So you got the Dimp Digital Seal of Approval. Now, this is a bit for me that always is the killer, though. So, or the most important thing, and I think for me, I can see where it's going, but I just want confirmation. What is this game, Super Mario Odyssey, which talks about being potential Game of the Year category? What is its official grading?
Super Mario Odyssey's official grading is Platinum.
Wow. Resounding. What company's that keeping? Do we know off the top of our heads?
Uncharted 4, The Witcher 3 DLC, and retrospectively I think I had The Last of Us on there and also Minecraft on there as well. There's not too many of them.
An elite club.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been so impressed with it, and it kind of like the Switch has had some great titles on it, but this has just been above and beyond what I would have expected from a 3D Mario game. So I'm really chuffed and I'm just loving it, absolutely loving it.
There you go. I don't think we need to say any more on that. Absolutely loving it. Thanks for joining me, Apps. It's been really good.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers. See you later.
Get ready for